Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The Global Outlook is sponsored by Maury's newsletter, Global Outlook. To get a complimentary copy, just go to theworldreport.org. Russia and China continue to make a mockery of U.S. cybersecurity, having access to hundreds of top officials' privacy and emails. Meanwhile, the White House is blocking a Pentagon report on Russian missile treaty violations. But first, Christians are being driven from the Middle East in a genocidal fashion while the world sits back and does nothing. Maury, we're seeing, you always say history repeats itself. Are we seeing a genocide being
Yes, that's exactly the same
taken
thing.
out against the Christians in the Middle East?
Yes, it's a carbon copy of what they did to the Jews. The Muslims hate Christians far more than they ever hate Jews. The Jews, they never were a problem, because by the time Islam became a religion in the 6th century, the Jews really had lost their biblical power. You know, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, Maccabee, and all these other people. So by that time, they weren't any problem anymore. They didn't care that much about Jews. They didn't kill many Jews because they didn't care, other than, you know, the Arabs once Palestine became Israel. They look at Christianity as a religion to be wiped off the face of the earth. And you know what gets my goat? When the Pope, who's supposed to be the great vizier of Christianity, not only lets this happen, but he embraces the Abbas, the head of the Palestinian state, and says the Vatican approves the Palestinian state. And then he goes out and says about sanctuary cities. He said it's a terrible thing that we don't allow that to be happening everywhere in the country. If you look at his background, you will see a liberation priest in South America. You know,
And he's the first non-European pope in what, 1500, 1600? It's been
ever.
Centuries.
No, it's ever since you know, the basic Helen, who was a wife of the basic czar of when Rome was going downhill. Constantine was the successor of Caesar many generations past, in the 4th century, and Constantine saw in this religion, which was a Jewish sect. Christianity originally started as a Jewish sect, and he saw how they basically prayed to their Savior as they were being killed by animals, you know, in their fight in the Roman stadiums. So from then on, Roman Catholicism became the #1 religion in the world. And today, there's roughly about 1 billion Christians in this world, and roughly about the same number of Muslims. But they look at Christianity as something to be wiped out, and we say nothing. We say absolutely nothing. I've never heard our president say something when they see pictures of people getting their heads cut off, or just before getting their heads cut off. You know, one of the reasons that Hitler got away with the Holocaust to the point where even...
Because they kept it hush.
Because you didn't have the technology of
cell phones and emails.
And first of all, Churchill was more friendly, but Roosevelt felt if he did anything to help the Jews, they would say, oh, well, his real name was Rosenfeld. You know, I don't want to go into that, but he...
And what about the Kurds? We're doing nothing to help the Kurds that are fighting our war in Syria and Iraq against ISIS and everything else, Al-Qaeda and all these other forces, and we're not doing a thing to help them either.
Well, and also we never recognized the Armenian genocide by the Turks in the Second War.
Well, Erdogan almost came to blows with Obama over that about 5-6 months ago when it was the anniversary of that.
That's right.
If you recall.
In April. I think April 23rd. Yeah, and I, as a gentleman here in this town, I made that a basis to my global outlook, and he sent it around. He said it was so good that somebody was writing that wasn't basic Armenian himself was writing about it and what happened, and that this had all the earmarks of a genocide.
So we've talked about this on the show over the last few months. The Sunni-Shia confrontation that is probably inevitable. Where do you find the Kurds, the Yazidis, and these other little sects that are kind of floating around out there?
Well, they don't mean anything. I think basically it's become, the whole background is one belief that the direct line of Muhammad is best represented by the Shias, and the other ones that there was a mistake, and like the story of Jacob, and he wanted to marry Rachel, but Leah was the one that her father wanted him to marry, so they switched beds. Well, the same thing is true of the Islamics. I mean, they felt there was a mistake made, so one family went against the other family, and that's how you got the Shias and the Sunnis. And I'll bet you 1 out of 100 people don't even know anything about it or care less. All they know is that Iran is the big bad wolf in the Middle East today, and they are the ultimate Shias. And Turkey probably, and Egypt are Sunni-oriented, but they're not as vicious and angry about it. Same with Saudi Arabia. You know what's happening in the Middle East now. You know who is uniting as a unit? Egypt,
Jordan,
Saudi
Arabia,
and Israel. Exactly. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Well, we foisted the Muslim Brotherhood on Libya and Egypt, and look how that worked out. I mean, everything that this administration has done foreign policy-wise.
You don't get away from that so fast.
Has been a mistake.
It's not a mistake. It was done deliberately.
Yes, it was. Absolutely.
It was just as deliberate as not extending the hand of friendship and support when you had that riot in the streets, which could have toppled.
In Iran?
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, we've had cyber attacks on this country
yes, I
in
know.
recent months.
Right.
The Russians, the Chinese have access to our top U.S. officials, their emails. Is that one way we can get Hillary's emails, is through the Russians?
Well, if you...
That may be the only way.
Well...
But I don't mean to make light of it. It's a big, serious security breach.
Look, I think by now everybody knows that first of all, they lied about what prompted this attack on our ambassador.
Benghazi.
Yeah, and they said it was some stupid little...
YouTube video.
Yeah, exactly, which nobody knew anything about. And she, Hillary, as Secretary of State, said this is what caused this to happen, and we should arrest this person because he was the one that instigated this whole thing. She knew better than that. I'm sorry to say this, and I'm going to say it. She doesn't tell the truth.
Well, and they sent Susan Rice out to complete the lie for 2 weeks on every single Sunday show. She went fully complicit with the whole
absolutely.
YouTube, some video that nobody ever
And
saw.
also, what they don't want to see proof of is that she knew that this attack was going to happen, and she didn't care. Remember, she said a few months later, well, what difference does it make at this stage of the game? Well, she didn't care because they had a CIA set up not too far from where in Benghazi, where they had the consulate, and I guess they were warned.
So I guess the wheels have been coming off of this country as far as leadership-wise for a while. This Chinese attack that went into the government employees, 400,000 or 4 million employees' records were accessed. Mm-hmm. And now we have this Russian hack of all of our top intelligence officials. We don't have to keep secrets anymore. Everyone knows what we're doing. But isn't this a direct correlation to lack of leadership in this country?
It's a combination of not only a lack of leadership, but...
Incompetence?
No, not even incompetence, questioning what the motives are of our president. I'm not going to sanctify
maybe playing for the other team even?
I can't put any proof behind it, and I'm not going to say anything like that. But all I can say is when I see what has happened as far as our position, this liberation of the Arabs You know, the Arab Spring, that was supposed to be the end. You know, Jefferson said the only time democracy works is if you have an intelligent electorate, which I sometimes wonder if we have enough of those left in this country. But the point is, you knew darn well that, unfortunately, with the 400 million Arabs in the Middle East, there are probably a lot of good people, but they're scared. I mean, I can tell you, nobody, the people that stood up against Hitler in Germany kept their mouth shut.
Right.